Hey, welcome everybody. I just want to make a quick video for those people. On my blog, I've been talking about, if you haven't been to my blog, it's Bluegrass, L-U-E-G-R-A .design.blog. It's on WordPress. I've been talking about people like who are starting out in bluegrass and starting out with bass, and you can't afford even the cheapest of an upright bass. You can't find one under a decent one under $1,000. So you want to get started on bass. There's nothing wrong with, in my eyes, in my mind, nothing wrong with starting on electric bass and playing an electric bass within a bluegrass situation, an ensemble. So what I want to do here is, when you get your bass, and I just got this one through the mail a few days ago. It's a real cheap one, but I wanted to show you. This is probably what you're going to start out on. Something under $100, and then you probably invest another, say, about another 50 to 60 bucks in a small practice amp. But anyways, what I wanted to do was show you how you can get the electric bass to sound more like an acoustic upright bass. It's not going to be perfect, but it is going to be closer than if you use the electric bass the way it's set up. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you is your playing technique, which is going to cost you absolutely nothing. And then the second thing I'm going to show you is something that you can get from the dollar store. It's going to make it sound even more like an upright acoustic bass. We'll go into a few other things after that, but first thing I wanted to show you is, when you get the bass, you'll notice that most people, when they're playing electric bass, first off, you don't use a pick. A pick is going to just be too hot and too trebly, that pick sound, to give off a good stand-up bass sound. So you're going to be playing with either your thumb or your fingers, most likely your fingers. And you'll see that most electric bassists that are using their fingers usually place it at about the point, in this case, this is a P bass, which has these split coil pickups. They usually rest their thumb on the top of that pickup and play it in this position. Now, that gives a good loud sound because you're right over the pickup, so you're going to get a good loud sound. However, the thing about it is, it has a very trebly and biting sound to it. So what you want to do is get more of an acoustic sound. Now, if you ever watch a stand-up bass player play, what they're usually doing is, when it's upright, their hand is at the position of right about where the fingerboard is meeting the body of the bass. So what you want to do is pretty much put your hand about here, right at that juncture, and it may mean that you're going to have to move your wrist to bend it a little like this. And if you have to, you probably could adjust the way you play to bring the neck up slightly. Just how well you're feeling balanced with as far as your shoulder and when you're standing. But the main thing is to move it up more towards the fingerboard area. That way, you're going to get much more of a bass sound because you're further away from the bridge. Now, I'm going to show you with the sound, two different sounds, what that would sound like. Here's it with it near the pickups. And here's it with yourself by holding your hand and plucking it right where the fingerboard meets the body. You'll notice it's a little quieter because you're away from the pickups themselves, but you'll also notice a lot of that clunkiness that comes right off of the striking of the string is gone, and you have a much more smoother bass sound. That's because you're away from, the farther you get away from where the strings meet the bridge, where that sort of that bite comes from, you're closer to where the bass is, sort of more towards the center of the strings. So that is what you really want. That's probably the first and main thing that you want to do to get to that more of an acoustic bass sound, is moving away from the pickup, moving away from the bridge, getting it more towards the fingerboard, and getting that sort of more low-end sound with it, it's sounding and not as much bite. Now, the second thing what I recommend is something that'll cost you no more than $1 because you can get it at the dollar store. The sponges that you can get for like cleaning in your house, everything, sometimes they have like that sort of a Brillo pad type end on it. But what take that off, so you've got just the sponge. Cut a piece that's probably about 1 inch square and is the length of what you have from all 4 strings, and so that it evenly covers all 4 strings. What you're going to want to do is slip that through the strings so it gets all 4 strings are actually rubbing up against that, and you want to push it as close as you can to the bridge without clogging it. What you want to do is give that, you're going to be giving a little bit of a muffling sound to that bass string without it deadening it completely. It's just going to give it, you're going to hear basically there's going to be a lot less sustain in that string when you pluck it, but it's also going to take away even more high ends. So then you've got to sound even more like a string stand-up bass. That will help you get a lot more of an acoustic bass sound. Those two are probably your 80% there right there. And you could pretty much, with next to nothing cost, that's how you could go that route, and it's going to sound fine. Because what you're going to do is, as you go along, you'll learn how to get more practice with sounds and movements of the fretboard. But that's going to be more controlling the sound to be even more like a stand-up bass than what it was. So you're basically looking at something like this. Going in all the way to giving you a much more acoustic sound like this. Now there's other things that you can do that are going to probably cost you a little bit more money. If you want to invest in that, that's fine. But if you've just gotten this bass and you really don't have much more to spend, this is the route to go, and you're going to be fine. Just go ahead and start learning how to play, what notes you got to play, and learning how to jam with other bluegrass people. Now the other things that you can do, they're going to cost you some money. It'll get you closer to sounding like an upright bass, but it's something that's going to cost you a little bit of money, and you might not want to immediately spend it. But if you do, and if you have the money, or if you really want to start getting a little bit closer, even more to an acoustic bass, here's the thing: most basses that you're going to get brand new, or in most, any type, 99% of the time they are set up with round wound, what are called round wound strings, which of course means these strings have a outer wrapping to them, and it's a round wire that's wrapped around a core. What it does is give it that brightness sound. Back in the early days of electric guitars and stuff, they were using what was called flatwound strings. And flat-wound strings were basically strings that you had the same thing going. There was a wire wrap, but there was no bumps to it where the round wire is wrapped. What it was basically a flat string, and it gave you a little bit more of a, how would you say, a dead or muddy sound to it, which was more like even an acoustic bass. Now you can get them from Ernie, Fender. Everybody seems, most guitar string companies have some form of flat wound bass strings because they are pretty popular, especially with jazz players. But you're going to be paying a lot more. Round wounds you can pick up for as little as probably about $15. Flat wound strings are going to cost you probably at least about $25 or $30. And if you even go further than that, there's a type of string called a tapewound, which instead of the wire being on the out part, there's actually tape that's wrapped around a string, and it's a nylon type tape. That even gives you more of a acoustic sound. Again, Fender carries them, other brands carry them, but they are also going to be more expensive. They're probably you're going to pay at least $30 to $35 for a pair of Tapewound strings. But it's something you might want to invest in after a while if you really want to get more sound too, more of an acoustic sound. Last thing I'm going to suggest, I'm suggesting it if you want to try it. It's not going to change the sound dramatically, but it may give you a little bit more of an acoustic sound. They have what are called acoustic pedals. Now, these were originally set up for electric guitarists who wanted to get, like, for one song on stage, they wanted to get some type of a little bit more of an acoustic sound out of their electric guitar, rather than taking off the electric guitar, putting on a acoustic guitar for a half a song, and then trying to get it back. They set it up, it's a special type of pedal that's been made for about 10, 15 years now. This one is by a company called Behringer. It's called an Acoustic Modeler. I got it for approximately $20 10 years ago. So the prices go about, say, $25 to on up to $150 or so. What it basically does, it has an EQ built in so that you can shape your sound from your guitar, bass guitar, to the amp to even have a more acoustic sound to it. I've tried it with both guitars and basses. With guitars, it gives a little bit of acoustic sound, but it's not great. For bass, it tends to really work, but again, you'd have to play with the controls, but the main thing is it's going to be costing you $30 on up. So whether you really want to invest in that, it's up to you. My personal thing is 80% of the sound that you're going to be getting to get towards an acoustic is right here. Using your plucking string habits to move it up towards the fingerboard and sticking that little bit of sponge right there so that it's up against the bridge and deadening that stain on the strings. Other than that, what you're going to want to do is play around with your tone controls, both on your guitar and your amp, and listening to bluegrass songs on recorded ones on your CDs or MP3s. Listen to how that bass sounds and basically trying to emulate it from this point. And I really do hope that these suggestions were good for you. They've helped me out, and like I said, I have been a proponent of using the electric bass in bluegrass mainly because of the cost of an upright bass, and I hate to see people who are interested in playing bluegrass who want to play bass and can't afford to get an upright bass. It's a great start, and I hope that it helps you out and take some of these suggestions, and it helps you out in a future jam with the bluegrass bands or playing in one yourself. Thanks so much, and good luck to you all.